What's good, everybody out there on YouTube? This is your man Shadicstick dropping some hot frogga on this mic. Today we're discussing the future of Sonic games and in general my opinions and stuff on Sonic Frontiers, the final update or update 3, however you want to say it. While this is a discussion based around the Sonic Frontiers final update, I wanted to kind of expand the discussion beyond that. And in all honesty, I think the discussion around Update 3 needs to be bigger than just, oh, I liked Update 3, I didn't like Update 3, or Update 3 was bad, Update 3 was good. I think it symbolizes, I guess, a change in attitude in the series from Sonic Team and Sega, and I think it shows a lot of good and a lot of potential for what we'll get out of the next game or the next games going forward. But hey, if you want to see more videos like this, I'm trying to upload like once every week or so. So if you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, it helps your boy out. And with that all out of the way, let's begin. Hello, you're watching the show that opens your psyche, Mob Shattuck 100. And before I delve into the future of Sonic games and just, I guess, my opinions on Sonic Frontiers, the final update, I think I need to give my general opinions on Sonic Frontiers. If you haven't seen my Sonic Frontiers review or a large discussion video, I like to call it, I believe that you should check that out after this. Because a lot of my opinions have stayed consistent, I'll just give a general overlay of them. If you want to see more in-depth opinions or discussion around it, again, watch that video. But in general, I thought Sonic Frontiers was an honestly great game, and it's easily in my top 5 for both 3D Sonic games and just Sonic games in general. It may not be the most polished game in the series, but it's definitely one of the most innovative. It combines boost and adventure style in a way that I didn't think they would do. And in all honesty, I don't think we should ever go back from this. The story was phenomenal from a Sonic game perspective, and many people may say, well, I didn't like this. In general, that story was good, and that's all I have to say on that for right now. The gameplay is also some of the best, especially considering the fact that you can fine-tune it yourself. It's like Subway, you're the one who makes the sandwich. The music is also easily some of the best in the series, period, and is a contender with Sonic Adventure 2 for the best soundtrack in my book. Again, the game was great, but I do have a few quibbles with the game. By the end of it, it just felt like they weren't able to complete their vision, and based off of some of the interviews with people on Sonic Team, it sounded like it. And in general, Sonic Team has been a lot more open about, I guess, its production and how it's been tackling this game. Most notably, Kishimoto, the guy who was the lead on it. And because of that, one of the cool things about the updates that have come from Sonic Frontiers is that many of them were created based on the direct feedback and criticism for the community, for better or for worse. And we'll discuss that going forward. So, was Update 3, the final update, any good itself? In all honesty, it's some of the best Sonic content we've gotten, especially in short form. The return of multiple playable characters was definitely a big welcome, and I think the biggest contributor to this. Every character was extremely fun to play, and even though Knuckles' glide was initially broken, it was eventually fixed. I just genuinely think that they've gotten it down for how characters need to play, in comparison to Sonic. The variety provided by each character was really unexpected, especially considering at a base level, they all kind of controlled functionally the same. Each character had combat abilities and platforming abilities that suited them well. I mean, really the worst thing in this regard is the character specific challenges, and it's not that they were bad, they were actually pretty good. It's just that it segmented a map that really wasn't meant to be segmented in the way it was. So exploring the map as every character was not necessarily as fun as each other. I mean, I think I had a lot more fun exploring as Amy and Knuckles than I did as Tails, because Tails kind of broke the game in a sense. And while the stuff designed around how Tails broke the game was good, when you played as Knuckles or Amy, I feel like there was a lot more thought in how you had to essentially tackle tasks. Again, it's not the fault of Sonic Team because it is a free DLC, but maybe in future games we can get more character-specific islands, zones, and challenges. And beyond that, I also feel like the characters should share the same stat pool. Maybe have that separate stat pool from Sonic, but starting from zero completely was kind of like hitting a brick wall. I was not expecting that. So when you fought enemies and particular bosses, you would do little to no damage against them. While it was a lot easier to grind out these, stats than it was in the base game, again, it was just unprecedented and unexpected. But on top of this, bosses were updated and more cyberspace levels were added. I never really bothered with them too much. The cyberspace levels were a lot better than the way they tweaked some of the bosses. They just weren't that fun, and in many cases, they just weren't, they were just much unnecessarily harder. And that's how it felt. I just felt like they didn't need to make some of the stuff as hard as they did. It's not to say that all of the content in the update was unnecessarily hard. It's just some stuff that I'm going to talk about, especially later in the video. But outside of that, the additional story content was really, really good. And while I did like the original ending of Sonic Frontiers, this one was way more over the top and way more raw. The only issue I have in this regard is the retconning of the original ending in its entirety. I feel like they should have kind of combined both endings into one. I feel like both endings, have their own merits, especially since the original game's ending has a much more somber tone. And while the new ending has a lot of that over-the-top Sonic flair, I feel like all of it together would have been a lot better, especially considering that I really liked the monologue from the end in the original game. While the boss fight itself wasn't really good, that monologue is some of the best dialogue, I think, period, if not the best dialogue in the Sonic franchise. The music was also phenomenal, and I'd like to see what happens to the next game in this regard. I mean, again, we got a lot more variety in this game than I expected in the base game, and they just kept adding to that with this update. Hopefully, in the next game, we get that Sonic Adventure 2 level of variety where every character kind of has, separate genres of music to represent them, and in general, they're not scared to explore new territories. The cutscenes were also a lot more animated and in general have much better camera angles and compositing and stuff. I just really think they did a lot more to make this game feel more cinematic, a lot more polished, and in general, a lot more serious. But my main issue with this update stems from the very end of it. While at a presentation level, it is great, it is phenomenal. From a gameplay standpoint, it's everything wrong with the game. I've made some videos talking about Sonic Frontiers combat, but my last large video was really stemming from how to fix Sonic Frontiers combat. And I think that they took some of the community notes, like I said before, and criticisms too far with the ending of this update. One of the things that's most notable is that this game was not built with a perfect parry in mind. So enemies have really bad tails, like really, really bad tails. So why implement a perfect parry that is necessary for doing damage to the bosses? I mean, you have a 400-second timer on this boss rush gauntlet to defeat 3 bosses that only go, into their next phases. And when I say only if you perfect parry them, is ridiculous. And they don't allow you to use the basic game's parry in this mode. On top of that, some of the things that they want you to do for the final boss just make no sense at all. Again, in concept and in, presentation wise, it's cool. I mean, Super Sonic 2 doing a fucking Raging Demon is the coolest shit on the planet. But how do you figure out that the game wants you to sidestep to take out the end's little healing plug so that it'll stop healing? How do you figure that out? Genuinely, without looking it up. How do you figure out that you need the side loop attack the back of its neck, which is very, very, very hard to target? The game will tell you, maybe you should stop beating up the end. And really, I only found out by accidentally mashing to pull out that cannon. It's just nonsense. It really is. And I hope they never put things like this in future games. It really hampered what was otherwise a phenomenal experience. In general, this update was awesome, but I do feel like they overcorrected for criticisms from a few rather than the majority. I don't think people play Sonic games because they're difficult or hard, or at least I don't. And this shit was just unfair. I'm gonna put it out. Like, some of the stuff in that part of the update was just unfair. But all in all, I do think the update was awesome, especially getting to play as, Knuckles, Tails, and Amy again was a pleasant treat. And while I think, some of the ways they executed this update weren't the best, it was still, again, awesome. So what do I think the future of the series is after Sonic Frontiers Update 3? This update somewhat cements what I think Sonic Team's vision for the future is. The first thing I want to discuss is the games being a lot more cinematic with a heavier focus on story, especially after this update. It just felt like the cutscene quality was, pushed up a few notches, and I think especially many fans have called for stuff like that, especially with the more somber and mature tone, while remaining a lot of that over-the-top Sonic the Hedgehog flair. I also just think in general that they're going to focus a lot more on lore and continuity between games, especially with the way they were executing how Sonic talked to the Ancients. It just felt like they really wanted to go out of their way to cement the Ancients as part of Sonic lore. Hopefully we see some more in the next game, but I think we're not gonna, see an end to stuff like the Ancients showing up in future entries. The next thing I believe we'll see is multiple playable characters as a standard. I think at max it'll be like 4 characters if you include Sonic, but I think this is ultimately a setup for what is going to be the rebirth of, I guess, adventure era things, with a focus on larger scale environments and characters' different combat/platforming abilities in said environment. Again, I don't think we're going to go backwards from the open zone or open world Sonic game style. And because of this, I don't think we're going to see split stories in the same way again. I think this will kind of be like Sonic Adventure 2. I don't think we'll have the split stories, but I think we'll have a single story where, their character changes based on what the story requires at that point. And in all honesty, I really liked that. I liked how it worked in the update. Now, it did worry me initially because I was like, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to go back. It just said you'll be able to play them at a later point. And I was like, oh my god, I just want to play this character now. So I never really got to play Amy a lot at the beginning, but once we went back, I played a ton of Amy's gameplay. So again, I wish that they didn't, tell me, oh, I'll be able to play her later, because I thought the update was initially a lot shorter than it actually was. But in the end, it wound up working out. And the final thing is, I just think we're overall going to get a lot more difficult Sonic games, not in the way that it was in this update, not in an unfair way, but if they actually execute it properly, I think they're going to do this because we might see a lot better replayability with this game. I think one of the things that Sonic Frontiers lacked was replayability, mostly because a lot of people were playing the game. They got that open world fatigue, but on top of that, the game wasn't necessarily hard, even if you played it on hard mode. It just wasn't a super challenging game, and I don't think it needed to be. But because of that, I worry, because Sonic fans will say something needs to be hard when it really doesn't. The Sonic franchise isn't known for being hard. The only concern I really have is, accessibility. When the game becomes harder, it becomes less accessible. So how do we make that, difficulty accessible? Like, how do they find that good balance? I don't know. But I do think increased difficulty will be a part of future Sonic titles. So, in conclusion, I honestly believe after the release of Sonic Frontiers Update 3, Kishimoto and his team understand what they need to do for the franchise going forward, especially since they listen to criticisms. Hopefully, this video goes their way and they see it. They've listened to a ton of feedback concerning the game and really have gone out of their way to, outdo themselves. I think one of the core concerns actually was outdoing fans, because they said they saw a lot of the mods and, they were like, we need to go beyond that for this DLC. From what we know, the DLC wasn't as over the top as it initially, as it is now. And again, while it's not the perfect update, it was definitely great, and I think it's a good indicator of what's to come for the franchise in future installments, especially as Sega ramps up their production on all of their other in-house projects in general. But I don't know, what do you think you're going to see from the franchise going forward? Do you think you're going to see anything I talked about in this video? Did you like the update itself? I know a lot of you guys gave this, an S and an A rank when I made that poll a short while ago. In all honesty, in my opinion, it's an S rank update, mostly because of how much content we got, and in general how polished it was, considering it was free and how little time they really got it out. But with that all out of the way, this has been your man Shadicstick. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Share this video out with your friends. Remember to follow your boy on the Elon Musk app. Links are down in the description as always. And if you want to support the channel directly, become a channel member or leave a super thanks down in that comment section below. This has been your man Shadicstick. Remember, Hot Faraga turns to Cold Blizzaga. Chill out some of my other videos. Peace, and have a good one.